Oh.
Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody. This is SharePoint Dev Weekly. Patrick was 2 minutes late. He just arrived, and that's why we exactly start recording now, right?
Right on time.
Right on time. And you're wearing the classic PMP
I am.
T-shirt, actually.
I got dressed up for this.
Yeah, that's a collectible. That's a really old one. That's actually 2 years old or something. We haven't actually
I don't know anymore.
Long time. That's cool. And Waldek is wearing the devoffice.com. Super fashionable as well.
I should have one of those too, so I should have worn that.
I'm just making a statement here. So what was it? Can somebody read?
What one programmer can do in 1 month, 2 programmers can do in 2 months.
There we go.
How long for 3 programmers?
3 months.
Yes, exactly. That's how it works.
Or is it like 5 because you have to add the overhead and communication lines and all that?
Exactly. 3.5 months. So
yeah.
That's how it works. Now, before we go to the actual pages and everything else, which we will cut through, we went through this together with Waldek so that there's no surprises, because Patrick was late. You didn't see them, so it's going to be your
you will be hearing that over and over again for the rest of the call. Patrick, you were just like a little bit late.
I was a little late, yeah. Well, we had snow, which is not a common thing for us, so I was digging my wife's car out so she could go to work, and then it wouldn't start. So I was dealing with that issue, but I made it.
Yeah, that's good. That's cool.
And then it would start, and then you would lock out yourself out of your house, so then you had to go like all the way around. It was really
what's funny is I did lock myself out of the house, but my wife was still inside with our son. They hadn't come out yet, so it wasn't as big a disaster as I thought it would be. But it's funny you say that, because I indeed locked myself out of the house. It's been that kind of a morning.
It's a Monday morning for you, so it's Monday afternoon for us. So it's I'm used to this week already or something. I don't know. Anyway, so let's actually start with Patrick. Who are you and why are you in this call? And what's your SharePoint Dev kind of experience?
I'm in this call because Vesa invited me. And
I knew that was the easy part, right?
Let's see. No, I've been doing SharePoint development now for a very long time, many years, since SharePoint 2003 was a version, I think.
Right after the Second World War.
Yeah, right after the Second World War. So I did that. I've been a developer pretty much my whole career in various things. And then, a couple of years ago, joined the SharePoint Cat team with, at the time, Vesa and Neil. And then the Cat team, Vesa left us. And then the Cat team dissolved, because without Vesa's presence, we just simply couldn't continue. But no, we dissolved. Yeah, but no, we got dissolved because we got merged into Fast Track. So Microsoft Fast Track is I don't know what to call it, division group organization that helps folks migrate quickly, hopefully, and easily, hopefully, into Office 365 across not just SharePoint, but all the various workloads. So that's what I'm doing now, though I'm still very focused on SharePoint, and have been part of now the SharePoint PnP stuff for 3 or 4
and that was before you actually joined even Cat team, because that was one of the reasons
that's kind of how I got into the Cat team. Was I had started I had decided I wasn't enjoying my current position, so I wanted to find a new position. And I decided the way I was going to do that was, we have at Microsoft all these internal distribution lists, like at many companies. But, at Microsoft, there's 500 people on these random little distribution lists. But there's one of them for, what was it called at the time? It was like Office Apps Programming or something. And I decided I was going to answer every question on that distribution list. And so I did. And it actually worked. So, you get involved in the things you want to be part of. But it led to folks knowing me from that work on the distribution list to get on what was at the time the JDP team, which was sort of a virtual team that was helping people migrate specific to SharePoint. So that was a long.
Well,
you can edit
to
most
be
of that
specific, from farm solutions to add-in model, right?
Yeah,
so that was
from farm solutions to add-in model, which is fun, and got involved in that. And then the opening on the cat team came up, and then, like I said, almost 3 years now, joined that. Well, got that. I mean, I applied along with many other people, but I got chosen. So hooray!
And you've been also the driving force around the PMP.js or the PMP JavaScript core, which we called it first, and then we renamed that as a PMP.js to be more. Is it a more hip name? I don't know. Potato.js was already taken, right?
Yeah, which is sad. Yeah, so we started that. Let's see, Vesa and I think Waldek was there, right? That first dev kitchen way back when. Were you there or no?
I was in the one in Europe. I don't know if
no. This was
there was one in
US.
Redmond. Yeah,
okay, no, so I was there.
So anyway, at that one, I was sitting in the back, and we were not paying attention. We were talking, and Vase and I came up with the idea of we had everybody's familiar with at this point the PNP sites core, the CSOM managed core library. We had that, and we had the PowerShell, and those were kind of the two big, and the provisioning engine, obviously part of all that. But we didn't have any client-side stuff at all. Like, we didn't have a CLI, we didn't have reusable controls, we didn't have the new SPFX Yeoman community generator, and we didn't have PMP.js. We didn't have any of that stuff.
Well,
and
we didn't have SPFX at the time even.
Right.
So
we
that
didn't
was
have
the dev
SPFX.
kitchen around the SharePoint framework.
Yeah.
This was way beyond before.
This was the first look at it outside of the product teams, and they had brought in a bunch of MVPs. And I had just gotten hired, so I got an invite somehow. And then Jeff, my now manager, Jeff, invited me to come out. And so we hung out at that. But we came up with the idea then of like, well, why don't we have a JavaScript core library like we do for the other stuff? And so we started the PMP.js. And what, now 2+ years later? Ta-da! It's a thing.
Ta-da. Here we are.
Yeah.
It took a while, sure.
It took a while, no, for sure.
It always does, right? It always does.
It took a long time. And I think part of that is just SPFX is new. SharePoint developers are transitioning, right, from managed code to client-side dev. We were new to it. I mean, I'd done JavaScript and stuff in the past, but nobody had done SharePoint Framework because it didn't exist. So that was new and a learning curve. And then a year and a half ago, we started tracking the requests coming in, which we do for the CSOM, we do for the PowerShell. We do for the CLI, right, Waldek?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, the commands, actually.
Yeah, the commands that come through. But so we started tracking the requests, and we had, I think that first month, we had 1 million. Yep. I think we had like 1 million, and I was like, that's awesome. That's great. We're doing great. And then we kind of were there for a while. Like, we had 1-2 million requests a month, and then maybe 3, then back down to 2, and then all of a sudden it hockey sticked on us, and it just went up and up and up, and now we're over about 2 billion a month.
Yep.
Which is
so now basically you're doing 1 million an hour.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I can't math. It's too early. I've been shoveling snow.
It's multiple entries, even in a second in the worldwide, which is pretty cool. So, and just to again clarify how we're tracking this is that we're adding a additional header in all of the incoming HTTP calls. So we're able to then go and do a query on the other side on the SharePoint Online Logs and say, hey, dear SharePoint Online Logs, which is quite a lot of data, can you give me the numbers related on those requests where a header? So then we're able to do the calculations on that. So
yeah, and that goes through all, just to be super safe, goes through all the normal Microsoft PII scrubbing. We can't see even the real URL the requests are from. We can see what tenant it was in, which is how we get the breakdown of number of tenants, but nothing else. So it's just really raw numbers, but phenomenal growth.
It's still,
and I always say, just thank you. That's to everybody, obviously, out there in the community using the library and participating and helping to make it better with their pull requests and feedback. So really, it's a huge thank you to all those folks. I mean, we might have got it started, but it's really a community project at this point. So That's the other very exciting part.
I think that's how it always works. That's how open source actually works. So obviously there has to be the one person, like in the case of Waldek on the Office 365 CLI, leading that effort and pushing it forward. But then at some point, whenever it's mature enough, boom, it just starts living its own thing, right? And before you get to that moment, you will go through denial, frustration, anger, kind of I'm too tired of this. Nobody cares, and you just keep on pushing towards the future, and then suddenly,
yeah.
2 billion requests a month. Nobody cares. Nobody uses it. It's just me and my cat.
Yeah,
rabbits. Me and my rabbits. If you see a cat, let me know. That's a real problem.
Well, you're using the blur, so we can't see the rabbit here. So.
Am I?
Oh, yes, you are.
All good. It doesn't matter.
Well, it doesn't really change that much.
The room is still a mess.
Okay.
I have behind me. This is an 8-foot by 4-foot, 12-foot by 4-foot chalkboard that I got. That I thought would be really awesome to put on my wall of my office. And then we moved to this house, and you can't really tell, but the ceilings are shorter and they curve on the corner, so I have nowhere to put it. So it's just been sitting there since we moved here 3 years ago, 4 years. Cut it. Yeah.
Cool. Now, before we go to the actual article,
if anybody wants a chalkboard, let me know.
Shipping costs and so included.
Shipping would be extra.
Only $9.99. Only $9.99. Patrick Deals. .com. Anyway, so Waldek, what have you been up to during this week?
So during this week, I mean that week just started 6 hours ago, or
whatever.
So
the past 7 days.
So the last week we had meetings in Munich at Rancor. So regarding dev, I didn't do much. We had a release of PNP. We had the release of the CLI. Yep. Which is a part of the PNP umbrella. We have a new beta version with support for adding users to Microsoft Teams.
Yep.
And other than that, we had a curious request, and I think we mentioned that already in the past. Somebody who is on SPOD wants to use CLI, but then there's the thing with that in SPOD you can use your own URLs, and then like up until now, we assumed that all URLs towards we would communicate end with .sharepoint.com.
Which is 99.9999% of the tenants, but it's the 0.0002% of the tenants which are not. So
Exactly. So we're looking into that, and then we came across an interesting thing. Okay, so how do we test it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well,
I mean, so do you test that against on-prem? No, because there might be a different thing, because you still authenticate, I assume, against AAD, but is it the same AAD or is it different AAD? Do you have AADD or, well, no, that's weird. AADD? No, you don't have AAD. So that's yeah. So we're looking into that, and that's an interesting thing. But other than that, just going through.
Yep, makes sense. Now, on my side, plenty of random topics. One thing what's interesting, which will go live this week, is a updated set of SharePoint Framework training videos and materials. So we're looking really, I will make a big announcement on that one, because we really want to make sure that people understand that we have tens of hours of SharePoint Framework training material for free, plus presentation, plus hands-on labs, plus demos. So anybody in the world can actually establish their own training package and start delivering that internally for their company or even externally. So we'll just need to figure out how do we support if there's any questions related on the materials. But that's the easiest way to scale, really. Help people to first of all, read and consume the material by themselves if needed, but also if they want to redeliver, help them to redeliver. So I think there's a massive amount of still kind of SharePoint developers who are kind of struggling behind of the, should I really go there? And absolutely you should go there, right?
And have you seen too? There's the training coming from, I think it's from Fast Track, but it's that installable training. You've seen that. That's going to be, you're going to be able to provision essentially training to your SPO site.
Yes.
From event, once it gets set up, we'll have the online provisioning stuff from P&P. Yep. So you'll be able from that to provision directly into your tenant training materials. And those training materials are actually housed on GitHub, maintained on GitHub, and then the web parts that get installed in your farm will auto pool latest training content. So that's going to be a neat thing.
Cool.
Once that gets going, and that's been piloted with a couple customers. We're still working out the kinks there, but that's going to be a super cool shoot. And I'm trying to advertise this thing, and I've completely forgotten the name of it.
It's a learning portal.
Learning portal, yeah. It's some other
learning,
clever
whatever
name.
we'll call
yeah.
that. But anyway, it's coming pretty soon.
It's coming too. Lots of training opportunities for SPFX. Definitely worth checking out.
Julie Turner is working on that one. Stefan Bauer is working on that one as well. So it's a small world. Surprise, surprise on many of these things. Now, being conscious about the time, I know that Waldek has a hard stop at 1:30. So if we will go long on the articles, then you'll just disappear.
I will just.
Yeah. But let me actually share my screen and let's go through some of the articles, because there's certain things which we wanted to actually talk still together, and there's one specific slide which I wanted to actually talk with you guys as well. Now, first of all, few kind of updates for this week. So San Diego SharePoint Saturday is in this week in California, and they have a pretty nice set of people. Typically SharePoint Saturdays has a massive, good list of speakers here. And Dan Holm, as an example, is in there probably doing a keynote on that one. Well, Joel is there. There's plenty of other people, Seth Matthews and everybody else in San Diego. Now, there is also St. Louis, SharePoint Saturday this weekend. Awesome set of speakers here as well. So talking about different ways of customizing SharePoint or using SharePoint or user adaptation of Office 365 or Microsoft Teams and so on. So more and more we see Power Apps and Flows content covered in these as well, which makes perfect sense. So because it is overlapping so heavily. David Warner is as an example in St. Louis from a dev perspective, so from dev people who are participating in our stuff. SharePoint Framework customized modern sites with SPFX web parts and plugins. Interesting stuff. Cool stuff. Now, also in Europe side, there is a SharePoint Office 365 user group meeting in Glasgow tomorrow, Tuesday. So this call will go actually live few hours before this one, so it will be a tough call. If you see this advertisement,
you gotta get into your car and drive.
Yes, exactly. You're in Glasgow. If you're not in Scotland at the moment,
I gotta run to the airport.
Exactly. It's gonna be tough. Okay, so that was kind of the community stuff during this week. But now on the actual stuff, that's actual stuff as well. But for the new articles, there was a really cool stuff from Mikko Punamäki. Mikko has created the Site Designer IO. We actually covered this one in one of our episodes way back.
Have, yes.
Super cool stuff. You can actually create you can create the definitions of site scripts using this designer, add fields and add structures, and it actually helps you to create them, and then you're able to take that into your tenants. So super cool stuff, new version available, completely open source as well, and have a look on that. And it's good to see that it's getting a lot of love from the community as well. Now, The other thing which this is the thing what I wanted to spend.
I do just want to say real quick on that. It blows my mind, the stuff folks out there in the community are coming up with like this. The work Chris Ken has done with like the list formatter stuff, like folks are making amazing tools and just giving them to the community. It's really amazing to see and really fantastic stuff. So kudos to everybody.
Absolutely. It's one of those things. People are passionate clearly about sharing, and they see value out of sharing as well, which is really good. So. Because you're not doing your PMP.js stuff completely on business hours, right? So
no, that's something I think people are surprised by. The majority of my PMP.js time is not work during work hours.
Exactly. Or the Office 365 CLI stuff, what Waldek is doing. So for me, I don't know what's working hours and what's a hobby hour anymore, or what's a family hour. I have no idea. So I stopped calculating my hours at some point. Now, it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, so this one was the one which I wanted to spend a few minutes before Waldek needs to drop, and then we'll go to the rest ones. So this one is interesting from Mikael. Actually, he pinged me and asked, and we've talked about this one a few times in the PnP core team already, that we should get clear announcements out around this one. And this is, the title is weird. It's introducing SharePoint REST API v2, but it comes down on an assumption that people are not necessarily aware that we actually have a V2 REST API interface. And the V2 REST API interface is actually the proxy for the Microsoft Graph. And we had a really interesting discussion last week with Ide and Waldek and Patrick and Mikael in the core team, having a discussion related on what does it mean and how does it actually work, and what does it mean that I can use the V2 REST APIs rather than Graph. And I think the easiest way to explain this is by using a slide. So let's actually do that. Yes, I was successful. Ooh. So this is kind of I'm not going to go technical details on the architectural details, everything else, but think of this as a logical design, how things actually works. And this is the SharePoint Remote APIs architecture. So we have obviously the REST API, the classic REST API, the underscore API, where we have underscore API web and get lists and get lists and all of those classic REST API model. This is something which was introduced originally in SharePoint 2013. Technically, 2010 actually had some REST operations, but that was still a preview. And then 3 years later, it was a proper API, which was used by the product as well. Now, then at some point, this has existed now, 5 to 6 years already, right? And maturity of the SharePoint UI elements are clearly hitting this API because it's the equivalent on the server side as offering APIs and functionalities for the SharePoint UIs. But then we have the Graph APIs. So the Graph API is something which is relatively new. It has existed for a long time, and a lot of the files and let's say some of the SharePoint list APIs has existed for a while. But the coverage of the Graph API is different than the REST API v1, right? Because the v1 has existed for 5 years and it has been growing like a amoeba already for a long time. Now, whenever we introduced the Graph APIs, what was the decision internally in Microsoft or in the ODSP is that, well, technically, we could offer the V1 REST APIs through the Graph as well, but they are not consistent. They're not really designed using the Graph thinking, the Graph model, the Graph structure. So what happened was that they actually introduced REST API v2, which is the one which is actually responsible of the actual server or server-side calls around the SharePoint. So there is a separate set of APIs which are designed to offer the needed APIs which the Graph API is offering. So the Graph is actually just a layer around authentication. And how do you access the information in SharePoint or in Planner or in Teams or in whatever? So the Graph API layer is relatively actually small. It's the unified authentication and the standards around how we should implement stuff. And then ODSP, meaning the OneDrive and SharePoint team, is then responsible of the files and sites and lists APIs related on Graph, right? Now, what Mikael's article is now saying is that, well, this is the typical options classically, and one or two, you either use the Graph if that's suitable for you, or use the number one route, which is the old API. But technically, it is supported to call directly to REST API v2, which is the proxy which we technically created for the Graph, also known as a room, it's an internal code name which we don't actually externally use that much.
Except you just did.
Somebody's going to use that now and start quoting that. But anyway.
But the real advantage, right, is it's handling the auth. So you're in a SharePoint context and you can call that REST API underneath the REST API v2 underneath SharePoint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now,
and it's going to handle the auth to Graph for you.
Correct. If you are hitting just the Graph API, you will need to do the Azure AD authentication, and it's different because and why is that? Why is SharePoint authentication different than the classic Azure AD API? Well, historical reasons.
History. Yeah.
Yes. Then the SharePoint authentication is kind of an adaptation of a form-based authentication. At some point it was, and then it's using a different identity model than the Azure AD. You're able to get across the identities and auth using refresh tokens, but it's different. But if you would like to just hit the standard REST API without going to Azure AD permission and scopes and resources, you can actually do that using the route number 3 in the slide, and that's what Mika's post article is actually talking about. Kind of makes sense, but it's it's one of the discussion points. I think it was Stacey saying, why do you introduce a V2 API which doesn't actually have all of the capabilities which you have in the V1 API? Fair question. The question's answer is, well, it's potentially will have a lot of the V1 APIs exposed using the graph standards, but it's a matter of time, resources, and investments. And we didn't want to wait 3 years until we will have a graph API and standardized graph proxies towards the SharePoint data stored in SharePoint, which somebody might say that's a bad excuse, right? But realities of life.
Well, and let's be honest, we're never going to recreate everything.
That is true. Absolutely.
Because the V1 API gets generated, I mean, this is a little inside information, but gets generated directly from the server source code. And so we're never going to engineer something to generate a graph standard API from this other model. It'd be regenerating that entire code generation model, which I don't see us investing in.
Yeah. I don't think it's worth of the investment.
Right. That's kind of what I mean. It's just not worth it.
Sure. If we would have a infinite resources, yeah, sure. But I would rather still use the resources in something else. So
yeah. Well, the V2, like I said, the big win, in my opinion, is you get off to the graph without having to do all the extra login token handling on the side. Sure. Even though with SPFX as of 1.6, that got super easy with the new graph clients and token provider stuff. It's super easy to call graph now. Yeah,
exactly. But now, from a API URL perspective and REST URL perspective, we can actually say that if we have a graph API URL, is this one. So the SharePoint URL is actually this one. So if it technically doesn't matter, either one of you this hit from a request perspective, it will be exactly the same code, which is executing and giving you the results. The difference, like Patrick, you said, is the authentication model. What do you need to have authenticated against to be able to access the API? Cool. Now, if you can use graph, because especially if your functionality is working outside of SharePoint, which is always a good thing or a cool thing, because then you're combining data from other sources as well, then use the graph if possible. But again, if you want to make things simple and you have a simplistic requirement to do something simple, yes, you can use the V2 API and bypass the Azure AD authentication dance, so to say.
And do remember too, if you're doing AD auth, you can set up your AD permissions such that you can call SharePoint. So you could set up your AD tokens you're going to get back that you can call Graph and SharePoint V1 and all the other things with just that one token. So, but then you're not using the SharePoint auth necessarily. You're using the AD auth. But that can be a cleaner solution and can work various places instead of just on SharePoint.
Yep, absolutely. Now, and hopefully that clarifies slightly the designs and architecture what we're having. Now, let's go to the other community articles. This one is from Joel. Joel actually has 2 entries this week, so he's been blogging actively. At a Google Analytics on a SharePoint modem page, and this is around nice article around how you can actually add to the Google Analytics, and then how do you handle the navigated event in the right way in the Google Analytics so that the tracking codes and your current page and the URLs are getting tracked properly. So this is kind of a evolution on something which was seen in the past as well. I think he was referencing Chayo's Ferreira's original blog post, and then further enhancing that sample with this information in here. And I think he submitted also an update on the community samples, which is extremely helpful. Now, the second from Joe was around SPFX solution using PnP.js to consume project online REST APIs. I don't know if Patrick's seen this. Probably have, actually.
Yeah, so I have. This is something that's been in progress for a little while now. Powell had asked, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago now, about adding project support to the PnP.js family of things. And I said, fantastic, yes. And he's been working on that. It's not been merged into the main stuff yet. I think he's still trying to finalize some things. But this article is a great little blog post, but it does talk about how to go install the stuff from Powell's. Powell? I feel like I'm butchering.
Powell.
Yeah,
Powell.
I feel like I'm butchering that, and I apologize. From his GitHub fork. So you can actually go to his fork and install the project stuff and use it with the caveat that it's not quite merged into the main branch yet. It will be as soon as he gets it where he thinks it's good to go and submits a pull request. We'll get that merged in because I'm excited. I haven't myself tried this out yet just because I know he's been working on it and time just hasn't really permitted me to mess with it yet. But it's going to be really exciting to get this merged in. And open up a whole new world of things for project server folks. I know this is maybe not as widely used as SharePoint, but I know there's a lot of folks that have used project server. And this is a great, really great example for PnP.js. I just want to say, if you have ideas for bigger changes like this, so this is adding a whole new library to the set of libraries, right? Big change. Reach out to us first. We'd love to talk to you about it. And the only reason we want to do that is not to sort of judge your idea, but so we know it's coming and we can help you shape it, make sure it's going to fit. Because the thing I would most hate is for somebody to go off and do this level of work, because obviously this is a ton of work that's been put in here, and for it to just show up surprisingly as a pull request, and for some reason we can't merge it. I don't know why we wouldn't be able to, but for some reason, right? And so just reach out. Love these big ideas. So this is fantastic, and I'm really excited to get this merged in and get this joined in. But he reached out to us. We had a quick chat about it. He created an issue in the list. You can see that issue still sitting there, so you can go look at that issue, and you can just see we were basically like, hey, this sounds like an awesome idea. Great. Let us know how it's going. But if you're sitting there at home and you have big ideas like this, whether it's project server or I don't know, pick another Microsoft technology or even a non-Microsoft technology potentially, and you think that'd be a good addition to the libraries, reach out. And we'd love to talk about it. And maybe it's not a good fit, but we'd rather hear the idea and get a chance to talk about it than have potentially somebody just feel like we're going to think it's a bad idea. So if you have an idea, definitely just reach out to us. We'd love to have the chat. And this is a perfect example of somebody that had this idea. He's actually the second person that approached us with the idea, but he's the first person to really follow through and do the actual project server library. So it's going to be an awesome addition to the set of available things, and can't wait to get it merged. So, really, really great stuff. And this is a really awesome article explaining how, if you want to try it out now, you can do that. So grabbing that from his fork. Absolutely.
Good stuff. Really, really good stuff. Now, moving on things. So jumping in here, Corey Roth had a article related on how to properly add an application customizer to an existing SPFX web part project. And this really comes down on the fact that how do you need to modify the package solution JSON if it's initially a web part rather than a application customizer, or if you're selecting that web part to be a tenant scope deployed and then you add an application customizer and you don't want that to be a tenant scoped how do you actually get it available? Or how do you, well, the second thing here, how do you actually include the client-side instance XML if it's a tenant scope deployed extension and you want that to get included automatically on things? So, and this really comes down on the fact that the package solution JSON is the one which actually controls how the SPPKG file is getting packaged. Technically, it's there for defining the feature, defining the classic SharePoint feature, using the SharePoint feature framework, and then element XML files, and what do you need to do to make sure that your elements are getting packaged on the SPPKG file like intended. I can see your rabbit, but
our rabbit is
visiting, in the recording it's too small because we'll be
small.
Yeah. Whenever we stop this page sharing, let's say if the rabbit is moving at that point. Now, two more pages if we can actually get rabbit available. Now, coming back on the Corey roasts, thank you, Corey, for this one. This is good clarification on how things are working and what you need to do in here to get the stuff and then include it in the SPPKG file. Now,
and these are, I'll just say, the kind of posts that I think are great is it's stuff that technically, should this be in the official documentation? Probably. But there's no way ever, right, to document every scenario people are going to try. So it's super valuable from Corey and from everybody else out there that's doing posts like this of just, this isn't even a particularly long post, but it's a super helpful, hey, I was trying to do this, here's how I figured out how to do it. And that really helps everybody, build up that community again of just, these helpful little tips that it's not necessarily, a 5,000 line post or a 5,000 word post, but it's a super helpful post. So just a big thank you to Corey and everybody. I know lots of folks are putting out posts like that. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. Now, on the next one, this is from Yannick around the SPFX web part responsive to modern page sections. So how do you actually take the responsiveness into account using then Office UI Fabric and reading those things? So if you're designing a web part and you want to space depending on the size of the page, you want to render stuff differently. This is around that topic. So really cool stuff and clarification also how the Fabric actually works and how the Fabric Grid actually works from Yannick, and then showing how things should be or could be implemented using from a styling perspective. So really cool stuff. And then the last one is we're getting more and more video blogs, which is completely fine as well, because I think the video consuming is growing all the time. And this is really around from Sebastian Levert around how do you modify the hero web part and what's possible around the hero web part modification. Hero web part is one of those out-of-the-box web parts, which I don't think all of the people even know all of the possibilities behind the web part. So you're able to actually modify the layout quite significantly. And I'm going to actually jump in the end here, and I'm going to pause that one. But you're able to basically use the same web part to come up with a completely different kind of layouts and structures and all of that. So it's not technically, is it development? This is actually an interesting discussion. Is this development or not? I would say it's a solution design, and therefore it falls on the architecture and development discussions of SharePoint. So coming up, you're using out-of-the-box capability, you're configuring that based on your solution requirements. So, but it's really good to know what you can do with out-of-the-box web parts rather than always implementing custom one, right? So
yeah, any chance you have to use out of the box. I mean, I'm a developer at heart, but using it out of the box stuff is definitely the way to go when it works and when you can use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now, with field customizers and all the other things, there's a lot of power in not a lot of, what you used to write tens and hundreds of lines of code for. Now you might be able to avoid that, which I definitely, when possible, recommend.
Absolutely. So it's really important to understand what's possible from an end user perspective. As a developer, doesn't this mean that you need to know the basics and you need to know the UI layer, you need to know the business analyst stuff, but then on top of that, the dev stuff as well. So devs are king, right?
Yes.
Cool. I'll just move back and stop sharing. So, we we could see the rabbit, and rabbit walked away from the room.
Oh, the rabbit ran away. Yeah.
I just catch him or her walking away.
She has her little schedule in the morning. She's come around and done her lap. She's going to go eat now. She'll be back here in a little bit.
Okay, cool.
She lays around here on the floor and makes sure I'm working all day.
So that she's your manager then. So
yes, I'm her direct report.
Yes.
We get a lot of complaints on empty food bowls and normal office stuff.
Yes. Cool. So before we close up, so what are you planning to do this week? Anything interesting on your schedule related on dev topics?
Let's see. Yeah, pardon me. I'll toot a little bit my non-P&P horn. And we are in Fast Track starting to work on a lot of open source stuff. And so I'm in the process of getting some things released. One of the things is going to be a tool called Ide Fixe, which is actually written by a guy, Bill Ashcraft, who works in Fast Track. And then it hopped teams inside Microsoft and then ended up as one of those kind of not super supported things. But we're going to move that to open source and just getting more stuff out there. But I've been working on getting through, as you can imagine, to sign code at Microsoft is a very complex process that one needs to go through and get lots of approvals. And so I've been going through that. And also I'm new to it, so I'm learning it. And I realized
I think there's quite a lot of other people who are new to it as well.
Yes. So I been working through that and finally reached out. I called Uncle and I reached out to the team that's in charge of that and said, I'm stuck. And they gave me some great pointers, which one of the biggest pointers they gave me was I'd signed up. When you sign up, there's, I don't know, like 200 different codes. You have to pick your codes, and I'd picked the wrong codes. So I've gone back and I've got the right codes. And so I think this week we're going to try and get that out. Which will be a big thing. Last Friday we got.
What does it actually do? It's an ID change.
So what it does, so Ide Fixe is a little tool that takes. This would be again fitting with Fast Track and fitting with migration. You have your on-premises Active Directory, and you've got all your people. And when you go to Azure Active Directory, some of the properties and things you can set in certain ways. On premises don't translate over to Azure AD for various reasons. I'm not a super deep expert on that, but some of the characters can't translate, some of the field lengths can't translate. There's things like that, and you've got to normalize some of the usernames, but it helps you with that. So it'll go through, and it has a ability to scan for these problems, and then also it can fix. Not 100% of the problems it can scan for, but a bunch of them.
It's one of these examples that we have internal utilities which we're using, and why not actually give it to everybody else to take advantage as well, right? So why?
Right, and really, and I got in touch with the team that was owning it currently, and for folks not inside Microsoft. The way things work is a team might end up in charge of something and that team gets merged or reorged or whatever. And then that happens 2 or 3 times. And then there's this tool that nobody really owns, right? Because it was this team owned it a year or whatever, 2 years ago. And that team really doesn't exist anymore. And so they were actually getting requests for changes, and people were actually requesting the source code to it and say, well, can you just give us the source code? We'll do it ourselves, right? And they had no ability, no drive to do that because it wasn't really their tool to manage. And so what we're doing is kind of trying to, this is our first one, Ide Fixe, and then we're going to, if this goes well, which it's going well right now, I think it's going to be fine. But when that goes well, we're going to look for other tools in a similar vein, right, that are used, maybe are smaller, and get them out as open source. Because obviously you have the bigger stuff like the SharePoint migration tool. That's obviously a bigger thing, and that's actually supported.
True. That's officially supported tooling. That's
right. Yeah, that's an official thing. But then you've got these other smaller things that folks are using. Or what happens in Fast Track a lot of the time is somebody will write something and maybe share it with a couple people, but it's never officially a thing, right? So we're trying to collect that stuff too, little PowerShell.
And the source code is somewhere. It's not actually in a centralized location. It's somebody's own disk and whatever. Yeah, and that's
and especially with
good.
PowerShell scripts, like I might give it to you, you give it to somebody, you give it to somebody, it goes around, and then like I find a problem, I fix it. Well, then like people 2 or 3 exchanges down the road never get the fix. So it's good. We're trying to gather all that up into one spot.
Which really is one thing what keeps on amazing me. So sure we don't scale for everything, but you might think that there would be enough interest of building a let's say community around open sourcing of PowerShell. And at some point, right, we did have actually even a site which was called PowerShell.office.com. But that was a classic story around it was owned by one team, it had some objective for that fiscal, and then it went to move there, and then people left, and then nobody was there actually anymore maintaining that, so it got shut down, which is a pity because there's so many people building awesome PowerShell, but there's no forum to actually share them efficiently as a let's say centralized coordinated forum by Microsoft, which is a pity.
Well, if you have some PowerShell scripts, and we are looking for stuff that's at least tangentially migration related right now for Fast Track, but you can go to github.com/Microsoft/Fast Track, and we have a section there for scripts. And so if you have migration-ish related PowerShell scripts, absolutely welcome those. You can just submit a pull request. We've got the instructions there for contributing. Of course, all your SharePoint framework stuff, that should all still go to the same place. All your PnP stuff goes to the same place. But specifically, if you have little migration-related scripts, we would certainly love a shot at you uploading them to github.com/Microsoft/fasttrack.
Cute advertisement. Cool. Anything else what we want to talk about? Any last words on the?
Had a new PnP.js release last Friday. The was 14th, 13th, 11th, I think. Yep. Friday.
Yep.
So check that out. That's version 1.2.8 is now out. Got some great fixes in there. Alec
Terentief.
Yes, thank you. Yep. He helped me get through. We had some batching issues with actually the taxonomy stuff. Yep. So he helped me. We got through those. And I think that's all resolved. So some great fixes there around batching and caching in specifically the taxonomy library, since that's a different code base than the other stuff. And then some other fixes and additions as well to the other things. But that went out Friday. And again, thank you to everybody in the community. We're seeing increased contributions, increased participation. So really exciting to see that growth continuing.
And I have to say, in the case of Alex Terentief, he will be in SharePoint Saturday San Diego next Saturday.
SharePoint Saturday on Friday.
On Friday. Talking about SharePoint Online customization toolset. So he'll probably touch PnP.js over there as well. So if you're watching this in the US or closer to California, then drop by, and definitely SharePoint Saturdays are free for everybody to attend. So awesome places to learn new around the SharePoint topic. But I think that's it for this one. We lost Waldek.
We lost Waldek, which is a shame, and I apologize.
No. It's not about that. And we always we can't make this happen in less than a half an hour. It's just impossible. Have a viable discussion with somebody on the dev topics and different topics and opinions and all of that stuff. So, but that's fine. We'll have Waldek back again on next week. There's no bunny.
There's no bunny. The rabbit.
Should you go and hunt it down and just that we get it as a final thing? I can cut it down.
I could try. The rabbits love being picked up. So let's see how this goes. Hey there.
It's a SharePoint rabbit.
It is a SharePoint rabbit. It thinks something good is going to happen. All right.
I'll probably cut that section away, but here we go. There's a SharePoint bunny.
SharePoint bunny.
Awesome. That's a great closure for the.
So that's Disco. She lives up here with me. She's my work mascot. And we have another rabbit downstairs. And the idea was they were going to live together, but it turns out they hate each other. So they can't live together, which is super sad for both of them. But they literally, when we put them together, they just like attack. And you think of rabbits as adorable, but when they fight, it's like this adorable ball of just teeth and anger, and it's really depressing. So they stay separate, but Disco helps me here in the office.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. That's a great closure for this week's
this week on Rabbit News.
Exactly. Remember to buy carrots. No.
Actually, you shouldn't feed them too many carrots because it's a lot of sugar, and that's bad for their digestive system.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. That's good. Good to know.
If you were a regular watcher of Rabbit News, Vesa, you would know this.
That is true. Excellent. We will come up with a new SharePoint Dev Weekly again next week. I think we have Stefan Bauer coming up on next week to talk about the Yeoman generator. Stefan is part of the PMP core team as well. But have fun and let's make SharePoint. Let's make cool SharePoint extensions and share your learnings with the community. Bye bye.
Thanks for having me.